recording.
I would like to call to order the Park Ridge Park District regular board meeting of December 7th, 2023. The time is now 7 p.m. May we have a call to order, please? I'm sorry. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Bendy.
Here.
Commissioner Bowe.
Here.
Commissioner Grau.
Here.
Commissioner Halting.
Here.
Commissioner Leduc.
Here.
Commissioner Metza.
Here.
Commissioner Tunnel.
Here. Would anyone like to amend, add, or delete an item to the current agenda? Okay, hearing none. Would there be any public comment on non-agenda items? I guess not. I move to approve the minutes from the November 16th, 2023 regular board meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, great. May we have all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I would move to approve the closed meeting minutes as identified in Exhibit A and maintain these minutes in the closed meeting records of the Park Ridge Park District, finding good cause exists to maintain them as confidential. Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And on to the Executive Director report.
Thank you. Just a few quick highlights. I wanted just for a reminder for the board of the schedule for the executive director position. It is out and advertised as of this week. The deadline is January 8th for resumes. So after that, you will be being talked to by the consultants on January 29th of, who they're recommending and the list, whatever. And then in February, you'll be doing interviews. So that'll be up to the board, obviously, to set those. And I believe those will be in closed session. So there'll be additional meetings that you'll have to set up at that point. So I just want to give you the general overview of that schedule.
Can I ask what the 29th is? Is it a meeting or they send us something?
I think they meet with the board and give the.
On that
candidates.
date?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's the date. I'm sure you could probably ask for a different, if that doesn't work.
Well,
for the
I'm
board.
scheduling something and I'm trying to figure.
Let me look. I brought it with me.
Which date is best?
It says January 26th, consultants submit recruitment package to the board, and week of January 29th, they meet either virtually or in person with the
Okay.
board. So you can choose what date of that week, right, when it comes close to it. So I thought I better remind you because the extra meetings with the board during that time period.
We meet with the search firm, or who we meet with that week?
It says consultants meet with park board virtually or in person to review recruitment report and select candidates for interview, background screens conducted by the firm.
Okay, thank you.
So that's that.
Looks like we do have a meeting tentatively scheduled for the 1st, which is the week of the 31st, so maybe we can
That
coordinate it with them.
coordinate it
So.
with, yeah. So Mary Beth will be doing the coordinating, and then John will be talking to the consultants, pretty much between the two of them. But yes, so Mary Beth, you could, is that what you want us to do, is ask them if the 1st, they can come before the meeting? See how much time they need?
Yeah. I think that'd be great.
It's also local government efficiency dissolving.
Yeah, dissolving the efficiency act. That's okay, that'll
Okay.
take 5 minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good. 531 Forest View is very exciting. We've got temporary occupancy today. The last few items were being cleared up. We're still working through the stair, the access to the basement, but they're giving us occupancy without it. So we won't be using that. And we've got a couple solution items that they talked about today, some options. So the staff is meeting tomorrow to discuss opening and, ribbon cutting and opening. So hopefully in the next, very soon, I should say, very soon. So we'll let the board know when it's going to be, but it looks beautiful. So that is that. Wanted to mention about the Oakton project. We have 5 bids coming up on building concrete, the asphalt, tree removal, and site concrete. So that bid opening is on the 20th. That's a big chunk of the bids, and so we have a meeting on the 21st, so we can maybe report on.
It's a chunk of
Yeah.
bids, so there's still a lot more.
Oh, I know, yeah, but it's chunk of the bid. So that is on the 20th, and that is all I have to report at this time, unless there's any questions.
Just regarding the tree removal, I saw the email that was sent out today, and it did look like a lot were added that were the buckthorn along Oakton and probably buckthorn in that back corner. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working closely with Patty King, who's the senior landscape architect with White, about that. And so we'll have something for you that's more detailed and so you can see exactly where. But it is a lot of buckthorn back there, back where the dog park area was, and a couple of other undesirables like, box elders and things
So
like
maybe
that.
the price won't be so bad because they're little.
Yeah, I'm not really so worried about the price. I mean, as Commissioner Hulting had pointed out, when we did the GMP, they were carrying a large number of trees for the removal. So that was part of the reason why that number had changed, is because of that area back there. So, yeah.
Because at some point, the dog park was put
Right.
back there, not
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
buckthorn.
No, it's not just the
Other-
buckthorn,
yeah,
but
so
Well, but that's where a lot of it is.
A lot of it
it is a lot of it.
I just remember the price per tree was also high, and that wasn't really addressed in that.
No, and it's just kind of a generalized number, like that the contractor, obviously, it's just like a number for the budgetary. They're just talking about a line item number. Once we get the bids in, we'll know, and they'll have an understanding of what
But did
what
you
they're
say
dealing with. So,
submit for the bid then? Like
so the bid
trees?
the bid has the like a plan of the trees. We're putting an addendum and modifying that a little bit because I've actually been working with Patty from White, kind of with a scalpel on a couple of additional trees and some conversations that I've been having with her. But there is a drawing, like a GPS or a GIS of the trees, the tree species, as well as the diameters and the types of trees that they are. So
That's what I was wondering.
yeah, so when it
Take 148 trees down.
no,
A
no,
lot
no,
of
no,
those
no.
will be little.
no, absolutely, yep.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Sure.
And on to finance.
Thank you very much, President Tuttle. We'll be doing the discussion and direction for the 2024 proposed budget. Superintendent Larson, would you start off?
Hi, everyone. Before I included a memo in this packet, it's on page 7, and just a few reminders before we start this section about the discussion and direction of the 2024 budget. As a reminder, we've made the following changes to the original budget. One is that I added the tax levy extension, which increased by about $20,000 because of the expiration of the Dempster Western TIF. And then we added the 2023 capital carry forward project. So if you recall, that's just moving from the projected column over to the budget column. It didn't add anything to a fund balance. And then we included Oakton in a more comprehensive way into the budget. So no other changes have been made to the budget based on the questions that you've been asking. I just want to be clear on that we didn't want to make any other changes until we received your directions. So and then the other thing, we did find 3 things that we wanted to change in the budget that will be incorporated, after tonight. One is that we can reduce the property insurance expense by approximately $14,000 based on the PDERMA annual calculation. So the original estimate I got from them was high. And then after they had their council meeting and there was a vote, they do a final tally. And because we don't have a final budget yet, I'd like to go ahead and reduce that. And then Manassar, we included, Gail and I spoke, and we included a 5% increase for this year. They are not going to increase for this year, so I can remove that. And then the other thing we wanted to add was about $40,000 for professional fees and capital for planning for the 7-Eleven Hamlin property. So just in case the school district is ready to start talking to us next week,
Or next week.
Or next week. Sure, why not? Next year about ways we might want to work together with that project. We wanted to have just a little bit in there so we could do that confidently. So if you don't have any other questions about my notes, we can go ahead and get started. So we'll start with expenses, and the idea is that we'll kind of go through the categories. I'll ask if you have any discussion, that you want to share, any more questions, and then if there aren't any, we move on, and if there are, the discussion continues, and eventually, you'll kind of let us know what the direction is with a consensus. Okay, so we're going to talk about expenses first, and the first was the employee compensation that we proposed for full-time and part-time staff. And does anyone have any discussion or anything they want to share? Any questions?
Or any changes? Or
Any changes?
talk about it.
What we've proposed? Okay, so then I'll move on to the next one. The next one is capital projects. So you have the presentation with the capital project list. Any questions about capital? Any changes that you would like to discuss? Commissioner Grau?
I had a conversation with Terry, and I guess it might not change the budget, but I was saying, considering that the capital budget is it tight? That we may wait till some of the bids come in on the other Hinckley and South Park before we decide if we're going to do the the solar at the activity center. So I don't know if that changes the budget, or if Terry, you have further thoughts on that. You have
A microphone right there.
That's our karaoke microphone.
Right.
I don't really have any other thoughts. I don't anticipate that. I mean, it wouldn't change the budget. We would have to carry the money still for the solar for the activity in the budget if we were going to consider moving forward with that. I don't anticipate a large amount of savings if we're wanting to make sure that we still maintain a big buffer. But if we're concerned about there being a larger, I guess, overage, or if those bids coming in high before we start, so we're not over committing ourselves, then that is one strategy that we could use for sure. So
So we keep it in the budget, and then
then
once those bids
not
come
jump on
in,
that right away.
And
maybe.
then what we've been told, and that could shift, nothing's for certain,
Yeah.
but that most of the bids will be in for
Yeah, so-
Oakton by the summer.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't impact this because we couldn't use those. Well,
Right.
I
but-
mean,
well, if
yeah.
if something went.
Hinkley bids are in. We've already approved those. South Park are not. We're going out to bid in February, so that would be probably the one bigger one that I can think of. That would
I
really.
just remember you saying you wanted to do that right away, and maybe for work reasons, it's easier to do it in January.
It was just a matter of getting going on the project so that we could try to get it installed. Like there's a time frame in which typically that would kind of work, like your work window and all the things you have to go through. And I know there's a point in time, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, when the SRECs will be updated for the year, and so they may go up, they may go down, and that will change our calculation for the project. So that has an impact as well. But I mean, those are considerations. So I mean, if the board's comfortable and still interested in having that project on as a possibility for next year, we could certainly leave it on there and just leave it open for a discussion to talk about before we start, and just kind of monitor it as the year goes on, as well as it goes with other projects. I mean, I don't see any. Just because we have it on there doesn't mean we have to go forward with it. It's just, it's there. The money's available. It's being appropriated for it. So.
Yeah, because I think there was another question about do the roof next year and then do the solar.
Yeah, I would, and we could, we could work that out and do that. I would probably try to do them as close as possible, just so that we're getting the longevity of it and making sure that we're not. But yeah, we could consider that as well. So
But for budget purposes, I guess it's, no one said don't do the project. Or delay a year.
There were some comments to
Oh,
delay.
there was,
Mhm.
a year.
there were a
Okay,
few,
so
but
if anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, we did in one of the Q&As that we sent you. I think there was a question about the
Maybe that was
delay.
do the roof this year.
Yeah, it was a larger item,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it needed preventive maintenance first before the project could even be attempted. And I understand what Superintendent Wolf's saying with, you want to do that preventive maintenance as close as possible to the install. You do it and we delay 2 years, you wasted 2 years on something you didn't need. But I'm, if we're tight, I would prefer to delay just for 12 months for next year. Maybe while we have because we have so many different projects going on. But that's just what I think.
So that would be yeah, the board would probably have to,
Yeah,
this is one,
consensus about it.
probably hear from
I
everybody.
mean, I'm all for it.
Take a vote, or not a vote, but what's the consensus, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, if the whole idea of putting it in there is that if the money is available, we do it, but that we don't necessarily have to if we are too tight. I mean, I think it's kind of a good idea to leave it in as a placeholder in case we do have the cash to do it, so that those funds don't end up getting diverted somewhere else and we keep the priority on it. And then if, come summer when it would be time to actually do that project, if at that point we're like, no, we're too tight from overruns on the other ones, then I think we say, okay, let's delay this till 2025. But I don't know, I feel like there's no harm in leaving it there for now, especially in the hopes that we will actually get to it sooner rather than later. Because yeah, I mean, it'd be one thing if putting it on the budget meant that we absolutely had to do it, but it doesn't. So I think we leave it on there with the caveat that we kind of reassess before actually doing any like major commitments on it.
I can't find the Q and A where there was somewhere where there was going through the past process of how to apply for the different incentives. But when I was going through the budget, I also thought about a lot of the programs under the IRA are trying to be completed in 2024 ahead of the election, because there are some who don't like the IRA and could repeal it. So you don't know, nobody knows it's going to happen, but there is a possibility that if things change in terms of who's in charge of Congress, the federal incentives could go away. The state incentives would remain. So it's
That's
just
a really good point. I had heard that about electric cars too. But, that you'll get the incentive before that election. You don't know afterward.
but well, yeah. I was gonna say, but then the way that credit works, it comes the year after anyway. So is it? Have you heard anything about the? But we can talk offline, I guess. It'll be another conversation. I guess
Yeah,
the,
let's
the,
not
my
getting into
conversation, I guess
sketchy
my
ethics land here. with-
yeah. So if it were to stay in the budget with the concept that I've heard, then I would just normally once the capital's approved, that's kind of my team. We have marching orders to go ahead and work at our pace to hurry up and get that stuff done to whatever capacity we can. I would hold on this until at the very least until we've heard at South Park and had those bids come in, I think. And then once South Park bids have come in, then maybe I would engage the conversation with this board to say, all right, here's where we're seeing, here's where the capital plan is, and we could begin that conversation and take it meeting by meeting or month by month from there, if that makes sense. Well, and we can evaluate all that prior to
Depends
those
on what-
discussions.
Right.
Yeah.
South Park?
We're planning on going out to bid in February, so probably I think February, March sometime. We're looking to get them and approve them. So we were just looking at the schedule the other day and kind of adjusting and trying to pushing it forward a little bit. So we're in the February, March timeframe. So
Anything else on capital? Or, sorry, Karen.
Anything else on capital?
No?
Okay, do we need a consensus, or we feel like the discussion has been, everyone's,
If there's no changes, I think that,
okay,
budget as is, yes.
okay. So the final category in expenses is not a broad, well, it's the broadest category, which is anything new that you would like to talk about expense-wise as you've been reviewing the budget and listening to the presentations. So again, this is your time to discuss, suggest, changes or things you'd like to get other perspectives on.
Just keep moving.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to revenues. The first revenue category is the fees. I know, you at the operating presentation at the last meeting, there was a lot of talk about fees. So again, the same thing. If you have changes, things you want to discuss about the fee structure, specific fees you want to review or programs, now would be the time.
Did we do anything with the pool?
Pool passes.
Yeah, I'm like the pool pass and energy lady. I guess those are my pet issues. So, and I made, when I emailed Gail and Karen back, I was happy with the information we received on the justification for the increase, staffing costs, supply costs, and especially the information we received on comparable pool pass rates at nearby districts. We were on the lower end. So I felt, and I understand especially that the staffing costs for the lifeguards are going up, and we're hiring an extra lifeguard to be like the pool babysitter or whatever you call that person. So I don't know if I'm the only one who hears from people in the community about the expense of pool passes, but it's something I'm sensitive to, but after receiving the information, I was okay with it. But yeah, I still view use of a pool and swimming lessons as sort of core community services that we need to keep affordable. So that's all.
Anybody else?
It's all from the pool pass lady.
No, I agree with you, and I'm glad that you commented on the justifications for that. But yeah, and I know that the biggest comment I usually get about the pools is people wanting more shade. So, but yeah, it's hard to see things go up every single year. And I know that there's some of that's necessary because, especially with staffing issues, because if you don't pay enough, you don't get the staff, and then how are you going to have it open in the first place? But yeah, that's definitely something that I think it's good for the staff to be mindful of in terms of where increases hit.
Anyone else on pool passes, fees? All good? Okay. The last topic will be the tax levy, which is including the estimate for new property is going up about 6.35%, and that includes the TIF. So that's our last topic for discussion tonight in terms of direction from the board. Everyone good? Okay. Great. Thank you so much. I hope that we've been able to provide you with the information that you were looking for. Definitely when this whole process is done, I'll be looking back at it and finding ways to make improvements, streamlines. I'm sure I'll reach out to a couple of you to gather some how things look on your side and what you might want to see, for the next budget year, because I'll probably be starting that very soon. So thank you.
I just want to say thank you for all. We had repeated rounds of questions, and that's why we're all probably just for the record. That's why people are quiet tonight, because they've been sending poor Karen millions of questions in the interims and between the meetings. So I appreciate the extra information
Absolutely.
received.
That was definitely a team effort from all of us, and it was really interesting for me and helpful for me too. So all the questions were great.
Yeah, it was good to read through all those questions and answers. Very helpful.
Good. Okay, next on our list, we have the adoption of the 2024 budget and appropriation ordinance. So I'll explain this, and Dirk, you can correct me if I've got this wrong, but basically this is kind of our announcement to the community of what we are proposing for our budget in 2024. This is a tentative document, so it can still change. For example, the 3 things I told you we were going to add will still, I will need to add before we do the final one, the budget and appropriation ordinance that you'll vote on in January. So this, if you agree with this, we will post it on the website. It'll be at Main Park, and it'll be located here. And the idea is that the public has 30 days or more than 30 days in this case to come and take a look at it if they have any questions. They may ask you questions, and you can ask me or direct them to me. They may, come to staff directly and ask questions. I did tell the Main Park staff they didn't have to answer any budget questions. Send them my direction. But that's what this document is. So it's kind of like what we're proposing, and we're showing the public for the first time. Does that cover it, Dirk? Pretty well? Okay.
Thank you for the explanation. I move to adopt in tentative form the combined annual budget and appropriation ordinance of the Park Ridge Park District and the Board of Park Commissioners of the Park Ridge Park District, Cook County, Illinois, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2024. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion about this process? You're just voting for the form? No? All right. Mary Beth, you want to do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Leduc?
Yes.
Commissioner Bendy?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Halting?
Yes.
Commissioner Matza?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say we will have a few more of these. Our next meeting will be the tax levy that we will vote on, and then the budget and appropriations. We'll have a few more votes on loss and cost. Yep. So we'll have a few more things. I'm putting together the memo for the next meeting already. So great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Larson. And I believe that concludes finance, so I'll turn it over to Commissioner Bendy for Buildings and Grounds.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Matza. All right, let's turn it over to Superintendent Wolf. Thank you.
All right. So I have provided a memo in the board packet for discussion. Previously, when we approved the GMP for White, we had mentioned that there were some project alternates and that we would have those for discussion and provide them in the ranking that the staff had done so that we could have a discussion with the board on where these were and really kind of why we had them there. I think what's important to note is that this list of project alternates is not really 100% all-inclusive of all the alternates. It's kind of the larger alternates and the ones that we know at this time. In fact, if you had a chance to read the email about some of the Q&As related to Oakton today, you'll note that there was one section where I said that where we talked about the HVAC units where most of them had these high efficiency and heat recapture things. There's still a few that did not, but that would have alternates within the bids. And so there are some smaller items that are going to continue to come up or get baked in, or just even as the process continues and staff, discussions continue as we're still building some of the bid packages, there might be nuances about the type of flooring or something else. So this is not a 100% all-inclusive. It can and still will grow. But these are the things that we know of right now, or at least the time of when this was published a few days ago. So a lot of these things, as you can see, and it kind of starts from the top down, And we can, I don't know if you want to just maybe talk through each one of these things. I'm seeing some nods. So the premium for the PV solar panel roofs, this is for those two pre-engineered metal buildings, which is the turf building as well as the studio rink building. Really what it needed was a little thicker, more beefy structure to make sure that anything we put on there could handle the wind loads, et cetera. We knew early on that that was going to be important, and so that was in there as part of the alternate package. And just because that was the very first bid that we put out on the street, and we had to make an early decision, we told them and gave them direction that we should take that because it was important and something we wanted to do. We have subsequently been having meetings with the sustainability team about the inclusion of or potential for adding solar panels, whether as part of the project or at a future point in time. So, but the point is right here is we're ready for that. And stop me along the way or ask me questions. Yeah.
We've done that one.
We have done it already. It's included in the numbers that we've mentioned. So when we came to the board and said that we opened up the bid package for the pre-engineered metal building, and it was $1.1 million under what we had budgeted, that already included the fact that we brought in $43,500. Woo! Been dealing with millions of dollars a lot lately. $43,500 for that. So that's already in the project and in the project cost going forward. So.
Did you just say the bids for the building came in $1 million under budget? I misheard.
Yeah, did we not talk about that? Because I
I was just like, I
Commissioner Grau-
don't remember. I got a lot going on, but I don't
That's okay.
remember
It was
this.
never written anywhere. You just.
Yeah, because she asked me that question this week, and I said, I thought I had informed the board of that, but
I got a lot going
I'm
through this
sorry.
brain, and I don't remember
So
that.
one of the things that Gail and I talked about is that I need to be better about having in my board report
Right.
some updates about this. And so starting with the next board report, we'll have information about the different bid packages that are.
and what's
coming up.
accepted. But the metal building
apologize for
came
that
in
oversight.
$1 million under
Yeah, I
budget.
think it was the day of our last meeting or something.
I might have
so
just
it was-
mentioned
yeah,
it and,
so-
right.
It was in the board packet on Friday.
Or maybe it was in my board.
I think I read it on
So many.
I know, we've had a lot of numbers going around. It's all good news.
It's all been good news so far.
Yeah,
It's
so far.
We're early.
Hiding the bad news.
Right.
No, we're
Exactly.
early, but
Has
we're-
that gone down?
what's that?
Like, is it under bid? Has the cost of like
Metal.
the metal gone down, or
We jumped on that particular bid package because we had knowledge that there were people in
cheap
the
right now
industry
'cause
that
it's
there was going
low
to be
s-
cheap.
It's a
because they were
benefit of
trying to-
having white
It is-
because they know
They know the industry.
the industry,
Yeah, they-
right?
they
And
knew
when
there
to
was gonna
bid
be a
and when
drop.
to,
They knew there were some companies that were trying to drive business, and so they put a price drop in to drive business to fill up their books. And so we were aware of it. We put the bid out quickly, knowing that we might get this opportunity, and it worked out. So
that's a lot of money.
it is.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So they're not all going to go
Yeah, I
like
was gonna say,
that, but
don't get it. Yeah,
I mean,
it's a good
celebrate the victories, right? Because they're not all going to be.
Even if they don't.
No kidding, no kidding.
So, so continuing on, unless there's anything more we want to talk about there. Building and site signage. We have the electrical and conduit located or going to the locations of these signs, but we don't have the actual signs planned in here. It's a large, dollar amount. And so, when you get into a larger, bid like this, you're always looking for ways to protect yourself, to not be, locked into spending money and having no outs. And so you kind of look at some bigger things and bigger opportunities that you can make adjustments. And so we could put a really, basic sign at the street, or we could put a sign like we have out in front of Wohlers, or, whatever. But, this was kind of designed, and so we have an estimate there, and that, gives us a little more flexibility also with Margaret and her team to kind of work with what that signage should be, and then have it included in the bid process. Once we see some of these other bids opening up, all right, can we do it like this, or do we need to do a little bit, cheaper version of it here? So, and, my guess is, and for us, it's obviously, it's an almost essential part of the facility. You got to have signage that tells people where to go. So that's why it ranks as high as it does. So, as number 2 on our list. The operable partition.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, please.
Does that include all potential signs or,
So that budget carries the amount that for a sign that was looking at for the building, like on the building, probably what they were showing was an illuminated sign.
Yeah.
not like an electronic sign or not an electronic at the street, because
Oh,
we don't have the ability to do that now. So I'm sure that would be a little bit extra.
Yeah.
But it does carry a budget amount to do something more similar like what we have here at Prospect. So-
Any-
and
I
it has
mean,
electric out there as well. So
To Oakton, will it?
for the
include
street,
piping to Oakton?
sign, it'll have electric out
Okay,
there. Yep.
Thank you.
So the operable partition, this is just really the movable dividing wall that separates the two rooms. So it's a larger dollar amount, and so they kind of pulled it apart for the multi-purpose room, but they're going to have the structure. So there's going to be some structural steel that's needed to support the weight of that and the span. So they'll have that in the event that we can't include it in part of the project. We can easily come in and add it in. After year one, we've, made the revenues that we're anticipating to make with this property. And once it's up and operating, we can easily add that in. But obviously, in talking with April and her team, that has a financial impact on how they're planning on using the space. So, and it's not a huge dollar amount, so that's why it's ranking so high, because having that divisible allows them to rent those spaces out separately and generate more revenue. So
How big is that room?
that room is,
2 times the size of the Olympic room?
yeah, that sounds right.
Which is that?
is
Is
the
that the
second
party
floor.
room
Yeah,
upstairs?
upstairs at Oakton. I don't
Yeah.
know the square footage offhand.
Yeah. Well, I was just there for a party a few months ago, so.
too fast.
Well, I wanted to know how. Yeah, it's twice
you
as
need-
big as the one that I went
Yeah.
to.
Laid
So
out
you can have two
differently, it's probably going to
It,
be.
yeah, it's a little bit of a
narrower.
weird
Yeah.
shape because of the angled
Angle.
wall back there, but it's, from a size perspective. The number that's popping into my head is like 1,800 square feet each side.
Yeah.
That's what popping into my head, but.
So, yeah, that's a good thing to have.
Mhm.
Definitely. It's bigger than
Saturday
O'Connor.
afternoons and high use times to be able to.
Yeah, let me ask, when we were doing O'Connor, I know there was discussion about dividing it, and we ended up dividing it, right? So, is it similar to this idea that,
It'll be the
let's,
same concept, but it's
Yeah.
it's bigger.
bigger, yeah. And so this will definitely want to be in here, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
It's in
Good.
there.
Okay.
So the next item is wood slats, the corridor and reception desk. So this is actually to any wood slats. So right now the base bid has none, which is kind of a decorative feature where they were planning on having some woodwork on the walls as kind of a design feature and art and kind of creating some words out of the voids in the wood slats so that it would say Oakton or whatever we decide and kind of draw people in towards the front reception desk. The base bid has no lumber whatsoever. The wood slats idea in this estimate identifies us, try to capture some of the lumber or the wood that's coming out of the trees there at Oakton and bringing them to a mill shop, have them mill those into usable boards and lumber that we could then utilize within the building and in that space to kind of, repurpose those, the trees that we were not able to save. So there's a little bit of a work on procurement. I actually had that conversation today with Dirk about how we can go forward with that. So I have a path forward and I can discuss that with White. We think it's an important design feature, and we do like the idea of keeping some of those trees and reusing them on site versus picking up wood from the store. So this is why this one ranked higher for us in the grand scheme of things.
So if we didn't do this, where would the wood go?
Wherever it goes with the wood company. I mean, that logs, they could bring it to the milling company themselves. They could turn it into wood chips or whatever.
Yeah, and they wouldn't sell the wood. Like, are those trees valuable from a?
We haven't. I know some of them might not be. I know when we talked about doing this that we'll have to have someone come out and evaluate them.
Yeah.
Because as we learned with, one that fell recently in the last year over at Northwest Park, it looked perfectly fine and healthy. It was a 30-something inch diameter tree, and then it fell in a storm and it was nothing but dust on the inside. So there really would have been very little lumber we could have gained from that. But you know, like we'll have to evaluate these trees. So
The reason I ask is I had a forester come to my house to trim my elm, and he saw this like half cut down walnut at the back.
Yes.
He was like, "Oh yeah, you can get." So I some
Yeah,
money for that. So
well,
yeah,
I-
so
I
there's
will.
an eye in it. So I didn't know if what kind of trees were there.
Yeah,
if there
there's
was any
no-
value, like if we could offset the cost.
I'll tell you
up
from.
with selling it.
Yeah, there's only one small black walnut that I'm aware of that's even
Okay,
on
I
the list.
was just
First
I
of
was
all,
just wondering.
second of all, I'll tell you from personal experience because my father-in-law had a really beautiful walnut tree that you can't actually find someone to really physically take it because no one wants to run it through their veneer machine. The value's in the veneer. If they don't know where that tree came from and you run that through their veneer machine, and it's got a nail in it because you put a birdhouse and you never got it out, it will wreck that blade that needs to be razor sharp. They can't afford to do it. So it's very unlikely that they would actually take it off of our hands. So and maybe things have changed or technologies have changed, but yeah, we can look at that still.
I was just curious.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
All right. So moving on then to translucent panels. So the translucent panels are would be located in certain areas on the front of the turf and front of the studio rink. And so they would allow light in, but you couldn't like see through to make out, faces or people individually, but you might see their framework. With these panels, it would also emit, a glow kind of in the nighttime where you would have, if the lights were on, it would be illuminated through. So it definitely gives a different look to the facility. And it would replace where we have like, some of the steel white panels and things like that on the
I
facade.
think a thing to mention with this one is that we went very bare bones on, the design of this. So these are things that, they're, definitely would make a difference. I was over at Glenview the other day and they had these in their rink and it made such a difference, even though you can't see out, but it's the light coming in. And I think it's just to remind you that we're not adding all that, that we were bare bones and on design. So I would definitely recommend these as well.
Yes.
I just had a question how that would work since you already got the turf building.
Mm-hmm.
Do they cut holes in the building?
It would just, so the panels that make up the wall, so the building we've purchased it's pre-engineered metal. So it's got structural steel in it. And then there's a layer where they put on like the insulation, and then the facade of the building is steel. So some of those steel panels and that insulation just wouldn't get installed. And in its place, these translucent panels, which are, however thick with, airspace in between, they get put up in those places instead. So those metal panels then either get left with the company, we get a small credit, or, they get recycled or whatever happens to them. I don't know the specifics of that
So the
part
metal
of it, but.
panels are like siding that goes up.
Side.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it wouldn't be all of it. It would just be strategically in some
Right.
places.
Yeah, I just thought you bought something that was kind of prefab and you're gonna have to cut it up.
No, it
But
just
you're
won't.
gonna put it together.
Yeah, it gets put together on site. So that portion of it just won't get put together. So it is kind of
why
like
it says
Legos.
it's a
I'm like, I want to bring my 10-year-old.
Yeah,
Watch this get put together.
They, earlier in the project, we'll have to, and they'll let us know when that decision needs to be made.
Yeah, this would be an earlier in the project decision just because of the timing of, this is not something that we're going to come back. Oh, we're getting close to the end of the project and, well, look, we've got money left over. We should do these translucent panels and like take apart everything that we've put together. We wouldn't want to do that. So,
All right, so I saw this and I thought you've already decreased that building by $1 million, that you would do that. This isn't gonna go in.
I mean,
No, because we have,
it is a decision we could make right now, but we're not thinking, because we've opened to this point 2 bid packages out of what's probably going to be 20 something bid packages. And so, there's some packages out there that we want to make sure that we're not being,
and you
you
don't
know.
have to make this decision.
No.
now, is what
We
I'm
don't.
saying. That's what I was confused about.
We don't.
That you already bid out.
Once
that
we
one
need to
building.
make
Yeah.
the decision, though, we'll be like, oh yeah, this is the priority, this is a priority.
Okay.
you know.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what we're like, we've identified so that we're ready when those decisions need to be made, those dollars are available, like, okay, where did this fall in our ranking? Are we comfortable making these decisions? And that was really the part of this discussion, because these are the bigger ones, I think.
I mean, I think, I think our has a certain affinity for nicer aesthetics. And also daylighting can make such a difference in places where people exist, you know, it just
Yeah.
feels so different to have natural light. So I don't know if there's like fancy lighting controls in this building where you could turn the lighting down when you are getting daylighting or not, but
They are all interactive like that.
I'm in favor of, I think this is a great idea.
Great.
Just instead of like playing soccer in a cave, you know? Like, makes a big difference.
Yeah, and it definitely does. They've already done light studies to figure out what that means from a lighting perspective in those spaces and how that impacts the lighting there. It does have a minor impact, more so in the studio rink on heating values and heating efficiencies, but it's because it brings in,
Is it a ding?
it's a ding a
Those
little bit.
blues.
It's a ding a little bit there. Yep.
Yeah.
But it does definitely bring in an aesthetic to it. So, and the lighting, it definitely has an improvement too. So, I will also caveat this with that because we went through the city review process without them, because we weren't sure that we would be able to, we would have to go back to the city to get these. But it's an ask to improve, which is a much lesser of an ask, and it's for a very specific item, so it would be less of an issue. So it was a calculated decision that we made when we were putting in the package, was to take those back off the drawing set. So, because they were in there originally. So, the dehumidification system, while very important and also a high dollar value, this system was not identified by White as we were going through the process. They actually thought they were newer than they were. They are functioning very well for us, knock on wood, but they are at an age where they should be considered for replacement. When talking with the team here, we decided to rank these lower than the translucent panels because they're a decision that while we would prefer not to close down and have those replaced the year after we opened, we could, because at some point in time that will have to happen. So we'll continue to monitor the project and where things are at, and should the project allow, we would pick the appropriate time. But we felt since it didn't necessitate being done during the construction process like the translucent panels, they didn't deserve to be ranked higher than the translucent panels. So.
Is there a benefit, like translucent panels, to do it? Like, is there an expiration where you get past the point in the project where you can't do it?
I mean, we can always do it, but it'll be a point where we're going to lose money because we will have paid for installation of something else that we'll have to remove and dispose of, and then pay to get this other thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
in.
so there will come
Be a
a point-
timing.
Yes.
There will be a time.
When it would be optimal to do this.
Yes. Yes, yeah, and White knows that what this ranking is. They're aware of it. We're talking with them about that, and so they know to advise us if we're coming up on that, so we can have that decision. So
Is that the cost if we're optimal, or is that the cost if we do it in 2 years?
this is just the estimated cost of what they believe it will cost us to install those translucent panels sometime during this construction process. But
The dehumidifier.
oh, the dehumidifier, that's within the project timeframe. Like, that's today's dollars. So sometime within
So
the
if we do it
timeframe
in
of
2
this
years, it'd
project.
still be 300.
It might,
or
it'll go up a little bit, maybe an
not
escalation,
be
but
600.
well, I mean, I don't know that market ball. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think, reasonably they understand what my question was, is like, if I want to include this within the project, how much should I be anticipating this might be? Their answer was $300,000. So
Okay, if the system went down, how long, let's say a year later, how long would it take to fix it?
I don't know the answer. I don't know how readily available those are.
Okay.
The dehumidification system really helps make sure that if there's a imbalance in there, that it helps take out additional humidities.
Yeah.
There's certain times of the year that I really don't think it does anything at all, and there's other times of the year where it takes humidities out so we don't get a fog in there. I've never known to see that in there, and I guess that's because it's operating well, but I've heard of places that their dehumidification system's not working well, and so that's been the cause of it, but I've never actually had to see it at Oakton because it's never come up. So.
Well, just wondering if, we would lose revenue or something if it was down for a week or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's what I was just wondering.
It's a larger mechanical system that's not sitting on a shelf, so
Yeah.
I don't want to wait for it to break down,
Yeah,
but
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be as catastrophic as like the ice mechanical systems, which would cause the ice to melt.
Yeah.
It just might not be,
Pleasant.
well, it might be a little foggy in there.
Yeah.
You know, the visibility might not be as crystal clear as you would want to
Just
have it in
wondering.
a space. So,
Yeah, okay.
but that's a good question that I can follow up on. The next item is the EV chargers. Again, you know, these are important to us, but in the grand scheme of the project, they're a lower cost and can really be put in at any time, including after the project, because of, you know, how they're being, we're running the electric and stubbing everything out for them. So, so we've put them down here at number 7, but we do feel like they are something that's important to us. So. Netting above the studio rink. This is just slightly lower because there's been a bit of discussion back and forth whether it actually is 100% necessary, and so we're still kind of looking at it a little bit. There's a covering that goes over the insulation that'll be in the ceiling that's generally white. It's meant to take the beating and deflection of a puck should it hit there. And the studio rink ceiling is obviously lower than the main rink. The main rink also has a wood roof or wood ceiling. You know, in the old days, they didn't have as solid of a protection there, and so there's been some advancement there. Previously, if a puck would hit that, it would destroy that insulation and poke a hole in it, which would obviously be terrible and unsightly. We'd have, you know, fiberglass insulation raining down. So we're just kind of having that evaluation and we're going to go look at a few other rinks actually to make sure that we're comfortable that what's there and proposed would not necessitate having these nettings, but we wanted to get a number and kind of hold it in here as a possibility. So we'll continue to look at that. And that's something that can be added in later as well. Premium for fiberglass reinforced panel doors or FRP doors. You know, these are more durable. One of the issues we have at Oakton right now is that the doors into the locker rooms are extremely beat up. They're hollow core metal doors. And so every time a hockey player or ice skater walks into the locker rooms with their skates, they dent and ding the door. And so they're just really beat up. These FRP doors would last against that. And so at one point we had talked about the concept of replacing or having all the doors in the facility with this so that they wouldn't get that beat up. As we were going through the process, White said, well, the cost of these doors are so much more that you can actually replace these other doors multiple times over before this. And so then we said, well, okay, maybe that doesn't make sense. But maybe there's certain doors that, like the locker rooms, where we're going to absolutely have some upset players after a game heading to the locker room with their sticks and back. You know, those might be places that we say, you know, we have money. This will keep this looking nice and be in good shape. This will be a spot that makes sense, but not obviously the office doors. We were actually looking at like the multi-purpose room doors. So, so we're just kind of, it was something that was identified prior to. Fire protection for,
I had a
oh yeah, please, sorry.
So how many doors are there for the locker rooms? Like,
When we first looked at it, I think there was like 10, 12 maybe. There's 6 locker room doors. There's a couple of coaches' doors, referee doors,
I mean, I guess in terms of the ones that take the most
mechanical
abuse,
doors. Yeah, I think it would be like 10 to 12.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is value in having doors that look nice, especially when the community is, supporting this huge expenditure. We don't want it to look crappy and beat up.
Oh, sure.
Those locker room doors are in the back of they're in the back of the rink.
Yeah.
It's like an area that the most of the general public won't be in.
All right, but I mean, still just even beyond aesthetics, though, if you think about environmental impact, I feel like it makes sense. Maybe we can't afford it to do it for all the doors in the
But the
facility,
important ones,
but
yeah.
for the ones that are likely to take more abuse, even if we're paying a little more, like, yes, we could theoretically replace the cheaper doors multiple times over, but that's not really a great respect for resources.
Sure, I get that. I understand.
So we could come back and just tell you how much for the doors we're talking about,
Yes.
if you'd like. And again, this is a list, and when we get to it, if if we need to make that decision.
Yeah, we're a little ways off from that bid package, but it'll be in there as a
As
an alternate. So yeah.
I just wanted to bring up my thoughts
Yep.
while I had them.
No, I mean
That's why we're talking this through.
exactly. All right. Moving on to the fire protection for the soccer building or turf building. So we've had some conversations with the city, and that they're saying that we do not need to provide fire protection or fire sprinklers over the turf area because we're not using it as assembly. It's being used for sporting activities, so it's not going to have like rows of chairs and people and like an indoor concert or craft fairs kind of things. And so because of that use, it's not going to be solid packed full of people. There's a number of exits on that space, and because of that, it fits within an area of the code that allows us to not have to have fire suppression. And so they've recognized that that is a big expense for that area. And so we'd had some discussion on whether or not this would be required by them, and they said that it would not. We have had a couple different conversations. If you read that other Q&A, you know where we're at with that and how we're going to try to maintain to continue to have that. So we do feel like this is something that using that turf area for assembly is just not really a realistic way that we're going to anticipate using that space. So spending the additional money for that is not going to bring us any additional value right now. So we're not suggesting that we would go forward with that. This is, again, not like something that we're asking for a pass on the code. It's just a space within the code that says because of the way that this space is being used, this is a safe way to manage this. It's not required to have. So we're not, in the eyes of the fire code, not making it unsafe by having it this way. So, yeah.
Is there any way the city changes their perception of that?
I mean, there is, I guess, but and that's one of the reasons why we're having pre-submittal discussions. I again had, just as of this morning, if you saw that the conversation, and I did get nods and a yes that is exactly what they said. So they weren't backing off of it. And again, my understanding is that that's a code compliant, use of that space, and that it matches with the code. So. We'll continue to have that discussion and make sure, but we're conscious of that, and we'll want to make sure we continue that communication.
No future programming use where we could, you had mentioned like a craft thing. Would there be any benefit for the park?
So the challenge with that, and this is something that we talked through on our end, is that when we went to the city and talked through, parking calculations and density out there, it was based on what our current planned uses are. If we bring it to that level, we really would be exceeding what we presented to the city and suggested to the city, and we really probably would be exceeding what would be necessary for that parking there, and we didn't really feel like that was appropriate. So we cannot fit any more parking on that site without taking out trees, without taking out driving range or losing other amenities. Like, the site's tight and it's what it is. So there's kind of a balance there that we're working with. And we feel like that with its current planned uses, it's already going to be so busy and booked that we'd be like nudging people out of the way for the existing uses just to find a way to get more people in there to use it in a way that causes us to have to put in, fire suppression and add more parking. So like,
So I think that's going to be so packed with sports. And that's pretty broad, right? The use for sports. So I think it makes sense to, from everything we've seen and heard, even if the trends change over the years, it's still going to be a space that's needed for some sort of sports.
Is there anything that's required for fire protection, even if it's just for our use? Like, there's going to be 15-pound extinguishers at exits, or
I'm sure there are, and I
not
know
going to have a suppression system.
Right.
this is specifically for not fire suppression in that area. The rest of the building is going to be sprinkled, like the hallways, the bathrooms, the offices.
This is just the turf field.
This is just the turf field, and I think over the ice sheet itself, but not over the bleachers. Like, the bleachers I think are sprinkled, but not on the sheet of ice. With the same concept in mind. And I mean, that is a large space. And so again, it saves money. Plus, if there was a minor drip, it would a hole in the ice. So, yes.
Who was the person you mentioned that you talked to in those discussions?
At the city,
Yeah, what was their title?
Kevin Plock, he's the fire marshal.
Fire marshal.
Yes.
Because I think, I mentioned my hesitation on this, and I'm glad we're, drilling it in multiple times. But I think
Yes.
what happens is when you have a change in staff is when they start, and we've gone through that before,
Yeah.
when they start changing their interpretation of things.
Sure.
So,
He's been there for quite some time,
yeah,
so
well,
I
that's not good.
well, I
Is he planning on staying
Yeah,
for
is he
quite
younger
some
than
time?
60?
I'm not
It's
sure,
in-
but
It's in some meeting notes, as,
Good.
as Terry had pointed out. So at least this time we have it in writing that, and his name is on there and a couple other staff members' names are on
and
there.
we have the email where it was redistributed to him
Mhm.
saying, by the way, here's the meeting minutes. Let us know if you have any questions,
So we're
concerns,
one
or
step
comments
ahead
to
on
these
that.
meeting minutes. And
No, I'm glad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because like I said,
no, you're
and you
completely
know,
right.
you guys know,
Yeah,
you've been
we
through
love
it
it.
many times.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll be continuing that communication and conversation. So, the very
Wait,
last.
hold on one second, Terry.
Yeah.
Is it possible that, let's say that something does change down the road, or we do decide that we want to put in a system. Is there anything that we should be thinking about now that would reduce the cost of it in the future if that's going to happen? Like, like you mentioned stubbing for the EV chargers,
Right.
is there anything along those lines that might,
Yeah.
just to think ahead?
Excuse me, we could, and I don't quote me on the numbers, but I have had some of this conversation with White, and I believe in the neighborhood of, $75,000-$100,000. We could, get in some fire pumps, or have it might require even a larger sized water line or something like that. So there was a couple of things, but those were kind of conversations that we were having about, like, we're not going to do this, then we won't need to put in this pump or have this pump planned for, because of the size of the system, it requires booster pumps. So, maybe having
Go
the
back to
place,
city.
yeah, having the place for the pump and the booster pump and like leaving that space open. I mean, we could do that.
Except for if it had to go back for approvals, then that triggers the parking and triggers other things.
Yeah, it probably would.
So,
So, yeah.
we can ask, we can
I
double check
would-
with White if there's certain things and, that don't trigger the other,
Right. It's always the after fact where you're thinking,
For sure.
well, what could we have done differently
yeah.
to, offset that cost?
Yeah,
or something?
right. And I mean, we really did. We talked through that and really talked about how we're just so tight on that site already. And it's not only just like Gail said, it's the programming as well as the space that we have available for parking and all these other things. So, like, it's really hard to envision how that could change. So, the last item is the generator. Many years ago, we used to have a lot more electrical problems, and so this was on our radar. Though, knock on wood, we really haven't had them quite the way we used to several years ago, 10 or 12 years ago. But we did get a price for a generator, and this would actually, in theory, be enough power to run the building, although they were a little skeptical on because of the size of it, that it would actually flip over and do what it needed to do. So, but as you can see, it's a really large dollar amount, and it would actually cause us to have to shift some things on the project and the property because we'd have to keep it hidden from, public view per city requirements. And so it would cause a lot of other additional changes. The likelihood of us needing to use it and it being actually functional and running when it needed to happen, let alone we have coverage with Pederma if we have a long period of downtime anyway. It just really, as we started to talk it through, once we got the number, it just kept falling down to the bottom of the list.
System.
So,
and
yeah.
Systems are different now. They're much more advanced, so
Yeah.
I did not recommend.
Yeah, and it's possible in the future that the batteries will come along that you can maybe save some of that solar.
I did ask them about that, and I have asked them to look into that as an option for.
Probably
Backup.
not yet from what I hear, but
Yeah, right. I've asked them to look at it. I haven't heard responses back on that, but as a possibility, as like a short-term backup for things that are like in IT in the offices. Is there a potential to have that, like off of, if we do it as part of a solar system, can we have like some, batteries or something that we could use in place of a generator? So.
So is the board good with this priority list? Does anybody have anything they want to change or we're good?
I like the inclusion of the EV chargers on there. Can you provide just a couple of details? I know you're probably not, anywhere close to specifics or anything, but how does something like that work? I would imagine at some point there would be a company that would, have the vending of electric charging, and is there any kind of income that
Yeah.
would come from that?
Yeah, and I think, that would obviously, I think at some point there, we would make a recommendation to the board, and since it'd be something new for the park district, we'd probably want to get direction, but I would expect that we would want to charge people for plugging into those. I'm thinking we would be looking at probably level 2 chargers at this point. Although I've recently learned about level 3, and I'm intrigued, but I don't think that we can swing those there. So, but I think that would be something that we would put in. I think we would own, but then we would have a software that we would then use like a third-party vendor to manage the software portion of it that would charge for it, and we would get the money back for what's being charged. I would imagine they take a portion of that. Lauren started looking at that a little bit early on just to kind of get this idea off the ground and make sure that this was something we wanted to consider for this project, but we haven't continued along that path as of now, but we will pick it back up again. So
Any idea how many stations there might be, or is that still?
it's
too
set for
early?
2, but it would be 2 chargers at 2 stations, so an option, the ability to charge 4 vehicles.
Well, you- oh, go ahead.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was just gonna say though, thank you for showing us a list, and I think the priority is pretty much the way most of us would probably like it.
Sure.
If we're giving consensus tonight, in the event you find the money and translucent panels comes up, you're not coming back
No.
asking us permission.
No,
No,
this
you're
is
you're
their-
just going forward.
This
right?
is you agreeing that
Yep.
at the time that we need to make these decisions, we'll go by this priority.
Right.
If there's something off whack or something, we'll come back and talk to you about it.
And only the panels is kind of that there's an optimal time to do it, and we can miss it. Everything else seems like it's kind of flexible.
I mean, there's always an optimal time for everything. It's kind of a little bit more, there's probably a slide rule for each one of those things, but
Will let us know.
yeah, we'll keep in monitoring each of those. So, yep.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it? All right. Okay, on to, thank you, Superintendent Wolf. On to policy with Commissioner Grau.
I move to approve the 2024 calendar schedule of regular board meetings as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we have a roll call?
Yes.
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 Do we have any new business?
No, but I point out that intergovernmental was not on this agenda, but I don't have any intergovernmental things.
Oh, no, we just put that on because it's always on the second meeting. It's not usually on this
I haven't noticed
agenda.
that.
Right.
I haven't
No, you're
noticed
right.
that.
No.
Good to know.
I don't have a report either.
So only on
Okay.
this one, there's only the subject matters that we have something.
Noted. I did not know that.
Any other new business? I move to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body 2C6.
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Bowe,
Yes.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Halting,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Matza,
Yes.
Commissioner Bendy,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel.
Yes. All right, we are back in open session. It is 8:49. It is still December 7th, 2023. I move to adjourn the meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.